The scent of dried hay filled Caden Ashford's nostrils as he guided his wagon along the rutted road toward the border checkpoint. His heart hammering so hard he was certain the guards would hear it before they saw him. Nestled beneath the mound of golden straw behind him, barely breathing, was an orc girl with frightened amber eyes who had stumbled into his barn 3 nights ago with an arrow wound in her shoulder and desperation written across her green-skinned face. He had found her collapsed against the feed bins, blood seeping through makeshift bandages she had fashioned from torn cloth. Her tusks were small, delicate even, protruding just slightly from her lower lip, and her pointed ears had twitched at every sound as she watched him with the wariness of a cornered animal. Caden had seen that look before, during the war, in the eyes of refugees fleeing burned villages. It was the look of someone who had lost everything and expected nothing but cruelty from the world. Instead of raising an alarm, he had knelt beside her and whispered, "Let me help." She had flinched, her strong frame tensing despite obvious exhaustion. "Why would you?" Her voice was hoarse, thick with pain and suspicion. "Because you're hurt," he had said simply, reaching slowly for the medical supplies he kept for injured livestock. "And because no one deserves to bleed out in a stranger's barn." That had been 3 days ago. 3 days of changing her bandages, bringing her food and water, and gradually earning fragments of her trust. Her name was Raka, and she had fled from a human raiding party that had attacked her clan's settlement in the disputed borderlands. She was the only survivor, or at least the only one who had managed to escape. The humans had come at dawn, she told him in halting sentences, with torches and swords, shouting about monsters and claiming the land for their kingdom. Caden had listened, his jaw tight with familiar anger. He had left the military 2 years ago precisely because of such atrocities, disgusted by the brutality he witnessed. The way his commanders spoke of orcs as though they were vermin to be exterminated rather than people with families and homes. His father's farm had offered him sanctuary from that violence, a place to rebuild something gentler than the world of blades and blood. But now that world had followed him home in the form of a terrified orc girl who needed to cross the border into the neutral territories beyond, where scattered orc clans lived in relative peace, far from human expansion. The problem was the checkpoint. Every traveler was searched, every wagon inspected. If they found Raka, she would be arrested at best, executed at worst. The border guards were particularly zealous about preventing orcs from infiltrating human lands. So Caden had hidden her beneath the hay, arranged to look like a simple farmer bringing his harvest to market in the border town. He wore his most innocent expression, the one that had always made his mother laugh and call him her guileless boy. Though at 24, he was hardly a boy anymore. The checkpoint loomed ahead, a wooden structure flanked by armed soldiers in the kingdom's blue and silver livery. Caden's hands tightened on the reins, his palms slick with sweat despite the cool autumn air. Behind him, he heard the faintest rustle of hay and felt a gentle tap against his back. Raka, asking a silent question. He glanced back as though checking his load, his eyes finding the small gap in the hay where he could just glimpse green skin and one amber eye peering out. "Almost home," he whispered, keeping his voice low and steady despite his racing heart. "Stay quiet." The eye blinked once in acknowledgement, then disappeared as she burrowed deeper into her hiding place. Caden turned forward again, forcing his breathing to slow, his shoulders to relax. Just a farmer, just hay, nothing to see. "Halt," commanded one of the guards, a thick-necked man with a graying beard and suspicious eyes. 2 others flanked him, younger, hands resting on sword hilts. Caden pulled the wagon to a stop and offered a friendly nod. "Afternoon, sirs." "State your business," the bearded guard said, circling the wagon with the practiced eye of someone who had done this 1,000 times. "Taking hay to market in Millbrook," Caden replied, naming the town just beyond the checkpoint. "Got a buyer there, innkeeper who needs it for his stables." "Innkeeper Brennan, that's the one." Caden had gambled on the guards knowing the local merchants, and his guess had paid off. The guard's expression softened slightly. "You're from the Ashford farm." "Yes, sir. My father passed last spring, so I'm running it now." All true, all verifiable. The best lies were built on foundations of truth. The guard grunted and gestured to his companions. "Check the wagon." Caden's stomach dropped, but he kept his expression neutral, even slightly curious, as though this was routine and unremarkable. The two younger guards approached the wagon bed, one on each side, and began poking through the hay with the butts of their spears. Every prod made Caden's heart skip. He had buried Raka as deep as he could, wrapped in a tarp to muffle sound and disguise her shape, but hay was not a solid barrier. One wrong angle, one unlucky thrust, and the sharp point would find flesh. "Seems like just hay," one guard said after a moment, his spear coming dangerously close to where Caden knew Raka's shoulder was hidden. "Course it is," Caden said with a laugh that sounded only slightly forced. "What else would I be hauling? Not exactly smuggling season, is it?" The bearded guard fixed him with a stern look. "Every season is smuggling season when it comes to orc sympathizers. There was an attack on a settlement east of here. Righteous retribution for their raids. Now we've got reports of a survivor, a female, trying to flee north. You seen anything suspicious?" Caden shook his head, meeting the guard's eyes with what he hoped was appropriate concern. "Can't say I have. I keep to my farm mostly, don't see many travelers, but I'll keep my eyes open." "See that you do. There's a bounty for information leading to her capture. 20 silver pieces. 20 silver pieces. A fortune for a struggling farmer." Caden felt bile rise in his throat at the casual way the guard spoke of hunting down a terrified young woman. "I'll remember that," he said, forcing the words out. The guard stepped back from the wagon, apparently satisfied. The bearded one waved him forward. "On your way, then. And Ashford. Lock your doors at night. These orcs are cunning and they don't discriminate in their violence." "Thank you for the warning, sir." Caden picked up the reins, every muscle screaming at him to whip the horses into a gallop, to race away from this place as fast as the wagon could go. Instead, he clicked his tongue gently and let the horses walk at their normal, plodding pace. The checkpoint fell behind them. The road ahead curved through a stretch of forest, the trees ablaze with autumn colors, red and gold and orange. Only when they were well out of sight, when the checkpoint was at least 2 miles behind and the forest thick around them, did Caden finally pull the wagon to a stop. "Raka," he called softly. "It's safe. We're through." The hay erupted in a shower of golden stalks as she pushed her way up, gasping for air, her face pale beneath the green of her skin. She had been holding her breath, he realized. The entire inspection, she had not allowed herself even the smallest sound. "You can breathe," he said, climbing into the wagon bed to help brush hay from her hair and shoulders. "We made it." She stared at him, those amber eyes wide and glistening with unshed tears. "You did not give me away." The statement hit him harder than it should have. "Of course I didn't." 20 silver pieces. Her voice cracked. "That is more than most humans see in a season." "I don't care about the silver." He meant it. The money would have solved a dozen problems, would have bought seed for spring planting and repairs for the barn roof and medicine for the livestock. But he would have burned every coin before handing Raka over to those guards. She looked away, blinking rapidly. "I do not understand you. You don't have to." He settled beside her in the hay, suddenly exhausted now that the immediate danger had passed. His hands were shaking, he noticed distantly. You just have to trust me a little while longer. Millbrook is real, and there's a merchant there I served with. He runs caravans into the neutral territories. He'll take you north, get you somewhere safe. Why are you doing this? The question came out almost angry, as though his kindness offended her somehow. Caden considered several answers. Because it was right. Because he had seen too much cruelty and refused to add to it. Because the war had taught him the value of mercy. But what he said was simpler, more honest. Because when I found you in my barn, bleeding and scared, I saw a person who needed help. That's all that mattered. Raka was silent for a long moment, her strong jaw working as though chewing over his words. Finally, she said quietly, "My clan always said humans were monsters. That they took pleasure in our suffering, that kindness from them was a trap." She met his eyes. "You are making me question what I was taught." "Good." He offered a small smile. "Question everything. It's the only way to find truth." They sat together in the hay as the wagon rocked gently on its springs, the forest quiet around them except for the occasional bird call. Caden realized he was very aware of her presence, of the way her shoulder almost touched his, of the way afternoon light filtered through the trees and caught in her dark hair, which she wore in a practical braid that fell past her shoulders. She was beautiful, he thought, and immediately felt foolish for thinking it. This was not the time for such observations. She was in danger, he was helping her escape, and anything beyond that was inappropriate and complicated in ways he did not want to examine, but the thought lingered anyway. "Tell me about Millbrook," Raka said, breaking the silence. "What should I expect? It's a border town, so it's rougher than most. Traders, mercenaries, people passing through. The innkeeper I mentioned, Brennan, he's legitimate, but he'll charge me for the hay and ask no questions. My friend Connor, the merchant, he has a warehouse near the north gate. We'll go there after dark." "After dark," she repeated, "so I must hide until then." "I'm afraid so. I'm sorry." She shook her head. "Do not apologize. You have given me more than I had any right to expect." Her hand moved, hesitated, then briefly touched his. The contact sent an unexpected jolt through him, warm and electric. "Thank you, Caden Ashford." Hearing his name in her voice did something strange to his chest. "You're welcome, Raka." He paused. "Do you have a family name? I don't even know." "Raka Ironheart," she said. "Daughter of Raka Ironheart, chief of the Ironheart clan." Her expression darkened. Or what was the Ironheart clan before the humans came with fire? "I'm sorry." The words felt inadequate, but he meant them with every fiber of his being. Sorry does not bring them back, but it is more than any other human has offered. She pulled her hand away and looked north, toward the invisible territories where she might find safety. "What will you do after? After I am gone and you return to your farm?" The question surprised him. He had not thought much beyond getting her to Connor, getting her safe. The future beyond that seemed hazy and uncertain. "I suppose I'll plant winter wheat, repair the barn, prepare for spring." The usual, she echoed. "A quiet life." After the war, quiet sounded like paradise. "You were a soldier." It was not a question. She had seen the way he moved, probably, the way he had assessed the checkpoint with tactical precision, the scars on his hands from sword practice. "For 3 years. Left as soon as my service term was up. Because you disagreed with the fighting." "Because I disagreed with the murder." He met her eyes. "That's what it was, Raka. Not war. Murder. Burning villages, killing anyone who ran, taking land that wasn't ours. I couldn't be part of that anymore." She studied him for a long moment, and he felt stripped bare under that gaze, as though she could see every doubt and fear and guilty memory he carried. "You have honor," she said finally. "That is rare in my experience. I'm just trying to be better than I was." That too is rare. They lapsed into companionable silence, and Caden realized with some surprise that he was comfortable with her. This orc woman he had known for only 3 days. There was something calming about her presence, despite the danger, despite everything. Or maybe because of it. Shared danger had a way of forging quick bonds. Eventually, he rose and climbed back to the driver's seat. We should keep moving. The sooner we're in Millbrook, the sooner you can rest somewhere more comfortable than a pile of hay. Raka nodded and burrowed back into her hiding place, though with less urgency now that the checkpoint was behind them. Caden arranged the hay carefully over her, making sure she had air but was completely concealed, then set the wagon moving again. The road to Millbrook took another 2 hours, the afternoon sun sinking toward the horizon and painting the sky in shades of pink and gold. By the time they reached the town gates, twilight was gathering, and lamps were being lit in windows along the main street. Millbrook was exactly as Caden remembered, a rough-edged settlement that catered to travelers and traders, with more taverns than temples and more mercenaries than farmers. The guards at the gate gave his wagon a cursory glance and waved him through without question. Inside the walls, the streets were busy with evening activity, merchants closing their shops, laborers heading home, and plenty of folks heading to the taverns for their nightly entertainment. Caden navigated the wagon through the streets to Brennan's Inn, a solid 3-story building called the Wanderer's Rest. True to plan, he sold the hay to the innkeeper, a portly man with a jovial demeanor who paid in coin and asked no questions beyond whether Caden wanted a room for the night. "No thank you," Caden said, pocketing the money. "I've got business with Connor Aldridge. I'll likely stay at his place. Suit yourself. Connor's warehouse is near the north gate, same as always." Caden thanked him and guided the wagon back into the streets, now heading toward the northern section of town. Raka had remained perfectly still throughout the transaction, not even shifting her weight. He was continuously amazed by her discipline, her ability to endure discomfort without complaint. Connor's warehouse was a large stone building with a faded sign that read, "Aldridge Trade Goods," in peeling paint. Caden pulled the wagon around to the back entrance, where a small yard was enclosed by a high wooden fence. He hopped down and knocked on the rear door, using the specific pattern Connor had taught him years ago. 3 quick raps, pause, 2 slow knocks. The door opened a crack and a weathered face peered out, eyes narrowing in the dim light. Then recognition sparked and the door swung wide. "Caden." "Seven hells, is that really you?" Connor Aldridge had aged since Caden last saw him. More gray in his brown hair, more lines around his eyes, but his grip was still strong when he pulled Caden into a brief, backslapping embrace. "Good to see you, Connor." "Likewise, lad." "What brings you to Millbrook? Last I heard you were playing farmer out east." "I am playing farmer, successfully I might add." Caden glanced at the wagon, then back to Connor. "But I need a favor. A big one." Connor's expression shifted to wariness. "What kind of favor?" "The kind that requires privacy and discretion." Connor studied him for a moment, then nodded and stepped back. "Bring the wagon into the yard. I'll close the gates." Caden did so, maneuvering the wagon through the narrow opening while Connor secured the tall gates behind them. Only when they were completely enclosed, hidden from the street and any prying eyes, did Caden move to the back of the wagon. "Raka," he called softly. "It's safe. Come out." The hay shifted and Raka emerged, bits of straw clinging to her clothes and hair. Connor's eyes went wide, his hand instinctively moving to the knife at his belt. "Easy," Caden said quickly, stepping between them. "She's a friend. She needs help." "An orc." Connor's voice was flat, carefully neutral. "You brought an orc to my warehouse." "Her name is Raka, and she's fleeing persecution. Her entire clan was slaughtered. Caden kept his tone calm but firm. I need you to take her north with your next caravan. Get her into the neutral territories. Connor stared at him as though he had suggested flying to the moon. Do you have any idea what you're asking? If I'm caught smuggling an orc, I'll lose my trading license at minimum. More likely I'll lose my head. I know the risk. I'll pay you. This isn't about money, Caden. Then do it as a favor. You owe me one, remember? Connor's jaw worked. He did remember. Caden had saved his life during an ambush in the war, had carried him 3 miles through enemy territory with a broken leg. It was a debt Connor had acknowledged many times, usually over drinks and stories of old battles. Raka spoke up, her voice quiet but steady. I do not wish to endanger anyone. If this is too great a risk, I will find another way. Connor looked at her properly for the first time, really looked, and Caden saw the moment something shifted in his expression. Maybe it was the dignity in her bearing despite her ragged state, or the obvious intelligence in her eyes, or simply the fact that she was willing to walk away rather than force the issue. Damn it, Caden, Connor muttered. You always did have a talent for complicating my life. Is that a yes? It's a reluctant, possibly insane yes. Connor sighed and ran a hand through his hair. I've got a caravan leaving in 3 days, heading to Fort Crossing in the neutral zone. It's a mixed group, humans and orcs both, trading goods and news. She can travel with us, but she'll need to pose as part of my crew. Can you stay that long, Caden? Keep her hidden 3 days. Caden had planned to return to the farm the next morning, but leaving Raka alone in a strange town, even in Connor's warehouse, felt wrong. I can stay. Good. There's a room upstairs you can use. Both of you, I suppose, though I suggest you keep her out of sight as much as possible. Connor gestured toward a door that led into the warehouse proper. Come on. Let's get you settled before someone notices the wagon. They followed Connor inside, through a cavernous space filled with crates and barrels and sacks of goods waiting to be transported. The smell of spices and leather and lamp oil filled the air. A narrow staircase led to the second floor, where Connor maintained a small living space for himself and the occasional traveler. The room he showed them to was simple but clean. 2 beds, a wash basin, a small table with chairs. A window looked out over the street, but Connor had already drawn the shutters. I'll bring you food, he said. But keep the lamp low and stay away from the window. Millbrook's generally tolerant, but there are enough bounty hunters passing through that I'd rather not take chances. Thank you, Raka said before Caden could. Your kindness will not be forgotten. Connor looked uncomfortable with the gratitude. Just don't make me regret this. He left, closing the door behind him. Alone with Raka in the small room, Caden suddenly felt awkward. The intimacy of sharing sleeping quarters had not occurred to him during the planning stages, focused as he was on simply getting her to safety. Raka seemed unbothered. She moved to the wash basin and began cleaning the hay and dust from her face and hands, her movements efficient and practiced. Caden busied himself checking the window shutters and lighting the lamp, keeping the flame as low as Connor had suggested. 3 more days, Raka said, her back to him. Then you can return to your farm and forget this ever happened. I won't forget. The words came out more intense than he intended. He softened his tone. I mean, this isn't something a person forgets. She turned to face him, water dripping from her hands. In the lamplight, her green skin had a warm undertone, almost golden. Why do you care so much? I am nothing to you. A stranger, a burden, a member of a race your people despise. You're a person in need, that's all that matters. That cannot be all. She stepped closer and Caden's breath caught. I have watched you these past days. The way you tend your animals with gentleness, the way you speak to them as though they understand. The way you changed my bandages with hands that never once took advantage of my weakness. The way you risked everything at that checkpoint." She stopped an arm's length away, close enough that he could see the flecks of darker amber in her eyes. "You care, Caden Ashford, not just because it is right, but because you cannot help yourself. It is who you are." No one had ever looked at him quite like this, as though she could see past all his defenses to the core of him. It was terrifying and exhilarating in equal measure. "Maybe," he admitted. "Or maybe I'm just too stubborn to let injustice win." A smile tugged at the corner of her mouth, the first real smile he had seen from her. It transformed her face, made her look younger, softer. "Stubborn. Yes, I can believe that." The moment stretched between them, heavy with something Caden could not quite name. Then Connor's footsteps sounded on the stairs, and they both stepped back, the spell broken. Connor brought bread, cheese, dried meat, and a jug of ale. "Best I can do on short notice," he said, setting the food on the table. "I'll bring breakfast in the morning." They thanked him, and he left again, his footsteps fading down the stairs. Caden and Raka sat at the table and ate in silence, both suddenly ravenous. The food was simple but good, and the ale helped settle Caden's nerves. "Tell me about your farm," Raka said after a while. "What is it like?" Caden described it. The small house his grandfather had built, the barn that always needed repairs, the fields where he grew wheat and vegetables, the few chickens and goats he kept. It was not a grand estate, just a modest homestead on the edge of civilization, but it was his. "It sounds peaceful," Raka said wistfully. "I grew up in a settlement that was always preparing for the next raid, the next conflict. We never had peace, only brief pauses between violence." "What was it like? Your settlement?" She told him about the Ironheart clan. The longhouses built of timber and stone, the communal fires where stories were shared, the training grounds where young orcs learned to fight and hunt. She spoke of her mother, a fierce warrior who had taught her the spear, and her younger brother, who had been gifted with music and could make even the sternest orc smile with his drums. Past tense. All of it past tense. Caden's heart ached for her losses, for the life that had been stolen from her. "I am the last Ironheart," she said quietly. "When I die, the name dies with me." "Then don't die," Caden said. "Live, build something new, honor their memory by surviving." "I am not certain I know how to do that." She looked down at her hands, at the calluses and scars that marked a life of hardship. "I was raised to fight, to defend, to endure, not to build. Then learn. It's never too late to learn." She looked at him with an expression he could not read. "You have great faith in second chances." "I have to. Otherwise, what's the point?" They finished eating and prepared for sleep. Caden offered Raka the better of the two beds, insisting despite her protests. As he lay on his own narrow mattress, staring at the ceiling, he listened to her breathing slow and deepen. She fell asleep quickly, exhaustion finally claiming her. But Caden lay awake for a long time, his mind churning. 3 days. He had 3 more days with her, and then she would leave with Connor's caravan, heading north into a future that did not include him. The thought bothered him more than it should. He told himself it was just concern for her safety, natural worry about whether she would truly find sanctuary. But deep down, he knew it was more than that. In the span of 3 days, Raka had become important to him in ways he did not fully understand. Her strength, her resilience, her unexpected gentleness, all of it drew him like a lodestone. But she was leaving, and he had a farm to run, a life to maintain. There was no room for foolish attachments, no matter how his heart might protest. Eventually, exhaustion won out over turbulent thoughts, and Caden slept. He woke to morning light filtering through the shutters and the smell of fresh bread. Connor had left breakfast outside their door, warm rolls, butter, and sliced apples. Raka was already awake, sitting by the window with the shutters cracked just enough to let her peer out at the street below. "Good morning," Caden said, his voice rough with sleep. She turned and smiled, that same transformative expression that made his chest tighten. "Good morning. Your friend is generous." They ate breakfast together, and Caden found himself studying her in the morning light. The arrow wound on her shoulder was healing well thanks to his careful tending, the bandages clean and the flesh showing no signs of infection. She moved with less stiffness now, her natural strength reasserting itself. "How does it feel?" he asked, nodding toward her shoulder. "Better. You have skill with medicine, learned from necessity. Farm animals get injured all the time, and I can't afford a healer for every scrape and bruise." "You tend them yourself." She looked thoughtful. "Like you tended me, pretty much. I am grateful I did not need to be gelded or branded." It took Caden a moment to realize she was joking. When he did, he laughed, a genuine burst of mirth that surprised them both. "I'll try to keep the gelding to a minimum in the future." She grinned, pleased with herself, and Caden realized he would remember this moment. Her sitting in golden morning light, smiling at her own joke, completely at ease for perhaps the first time since he had met her. The day passed slowly. Connor brought them lunch and dinner, and between meals, they talked. Caden learned that Raka was 22 years old, that she had never been beyond the borderlands, that she had always wanted to see the ocean but had never had the chance. She learned that Caden's mother had died when he was young, that his father had been a quiet man who taught by example rather than words, that Caden had joined the military partly out of a misguided sense of duty and partly because he did not know what else to do with his life. They played cards using a worn deck Connor provided, and Caden discovered that Raka was both a quick learner and a terrible bluff. Her face gave away every good hand, much to her frustration and his amusement. "You are laughing at me," she accused after losing the 5th game in a row. "I'm laughing with you," he corrected. "I am not laughing. You should be. It's just a game." She threw a card at him, but she was smiling. They were both smiling that night as they lay in their separate beds. Raka spoke into the darkness. "Caden?" "Yes. What will you do when I am gone?" Truly, he considered the question. "Go back to the farm, plant the winter wheat, maybe get a dog for company. You will be lonely." "I'm used to it." Silence. Then, "I do not want you to be lonely." The words hung in the air between them, weighted with meaning. Caden's heart was pounding so hard he was certain she could hear it. "Raka," he began, but did not know how to finish. "I know," she said softly. "I know this cannot be. I am leaving, you are staying. We are different. Your people and mine, we are not meant to mix. But I wanted you to know that these days with you have been the happiest I can remember, even with all the danger. You make me feel safe. You make me feel seen." Caden sat up in bed, his resolve crumbling. "It doesn't have to be this way. What other way is there?" She sat up too, a shadow in the darkness. "I cannot stay in human lands, I would be hunted, and you cannot come with me. Your farm, your life, it is here." "What if I sold the farm?" What if I sold it?" The idea was insane, but once spoken, it felt right. "Use the money to start over somewhere new, somewhere we could both be safe." "Caden, no, I cannot ask that of you. You're not asking, I'm offering." She was silent for a long moment. "You would give up everything. For me, the farm is just land and buildings. You're—" He struggled to find the right words. "You're more important." He heard her breath catch, heard the rustle of fabric as she rose from her bed. Then she was there, kneeling beside his mattress, her face barely visible in the faint light from the window. "I am falling in love with you," she whispered. "I have been trying not to because I knew it would hurt when I had to leave, but I cannot help it." Caden reached out and cupped her face with his hand, his thumb tracing the line of her jaw. "I'm falling in love with you too." She leaned into his touch, her eyes closing. This is madness, probably, he smiled. But I've had enough of being sensible and careful. If the war taught me anything, it's that life is short and precious. If I've found something worth fighting for, why would I let it go? Your people will not accept me. Then we'll find people who will. It will be hard. I don't care. She opened her eyes and looked at him with an intensity that stole his breath. Are you certain, truly certain? Because once we start down this path, there is no going back. I've never been more certain of anything. Raka surged forward and kissed him, and Caden's world narrowed to the warmth of her lips, the strength of her hands gripping his shoulders, the way she tasted of apples and hope. He wrapped his arms around her and kissed her back with all the emotion he had been suppressing for days, pouring everything he felt into that single point of connection. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Raka rested her forehead against his. What do we do now? We talk to Connor. See if he knows anywhere we could go, somewhere safe for both of us. Caden's mind was already racing ahead, making plans. We could join his trading operation, work for him, or find a settlement in the neutral territories that welcomes mixed couples. There have to be places like that. There are, Raka said. I have heard stories. Communities built by people who did not fit anywhere else. Outcasts and wanderers and those who chose love over tradition. Then that's where we'll go. She kissed him again, softer this time, tender and full of promise. I cannot believe you are real. I'm real, and I'm yours if you'll have me. I will have you, she said fiercely. Today and tomorrow and all the days after, I will have you, Caden Ashford, and I will not let you go. They held each other as the night deepened around them, two souls who had found each other against all odds, in defiance of a world that said they should be enemies. Morning came too quickly. Caden woke with Raka curled against his side, her head on his chest, her breathing slow and even. He marveled at the trust implicit in her vulnerability, the way she had let down every guard to sleep in his arms. He did not want to move, did not want to disturb this perfect moment. But Connor would be arriving soon with breakfast, and they needed to talk to him to explain their decision and seek his advice. Raka stirred, her eyes opening slowly. When she saw him looking down at her, she smiled. Good morning. Good morning. He brushed a strand of hair from her face. Sleep well, better than I have in years. She sat up, stretching, and Caden forced himself to look away from the way her body moved beneath her worn clothing. There would be time for that later, he told himself. Right now, they had practical matters to attend to. As if on cue, Connor's knock sounded at the door. Breakfast, he called. Caden opened the door to find Connor holding a tray of food and wearing a knowing expression. Good morning, lad. Sleep well. We need to talk, Caden said. All three of us. Connor's eyebrows rose, but he nodded and entered, setting the tray on the table. This sounds serious. They sat, and Caden explained their decision. Connor listened without interrupting, his expression growing more incredulous with each sentence. Let me make sure I understand, Connor said when Caden finished. You want to sell your farm, leave human lands entirely, and start a new life in the neutral territories with Raka. That's right. And you've known her for, what, 4 days? 3.5, Raka supplied helpfully. Connor looked between them, then laughed, a helpless sound of disbelief. You're both completely insane. That's not a no, Caden pointed out. No, it's not a no, it's just… 7 hells, Caden, Connor rubbed his face. All right, let's think about this practically. Your farm. How much is it worth? I'm not sure. Maybe 300 gold if I can find the right buyer. I can help with that. I know a few folks looking to expand. You'll want to sell the livestock and equipment separately though, get better prices that way. Connor was already in merchant mode, calculating values and logistics. As for where you'll go, I've got contacts in Fort Crossing. It's a free settlement, no allegiance to any kingdom or clan. Humans, orcs, even some elves and dwarves. They don't care who loves who as long as you pull your weight. Is there work? Raka asked. Always. Frontier towns need farmers, guards, traders, craftspeople. With Caden's farming knowledge and your combat skills, you'll both be assets. Hope bloomed in Caden's chest. So it's possible. Possible, yes. Easy, no. Connor fixed them both with a serious look. You'll face prejudice even there. People have long memories and short tempers. You'll need to be strong, both of you, and you'll need to be certain this is what you want. Because once you're known as a mixed couple, there's no undoing that. You'll carry that label everywhere. I don't care about labels, Caden said. Neither do I, Raka added. We have faced worse than words. Connor smiled, genuine warmth in his expression. Then I'll help you. We leave for Fort Crossing in 2 days. I'll give you positions as guards for the caravan, which gives you legitimate reason to travel. While we're on the road, I'll send messages ahead, start arranging a buyer for your farm. By the time we reach Fort Crossing, you should have funds to start fresh. Thank you, Caden said, gripping Connor's hand. I won't forget this. Just name your first child after me, Connor said with a wink. Connor or Kenora, I'm not picky. Raka blushed, a darkening of her green skin that Caden found adorable. That is premature discussion. Is it? Connor's grin widened. The way you two look at each other, I'd say it's right on time. The next 2 days passed in a blur of preparation. Connor provided them with proper clothing and equipment for their roles as caravan guards, sturdy leather armor, weapons, and packs for their belongings. Caden practiced with a sword again for the first time in 2 years, his muscles remembering the motions even as his mind rebelled against the memories they carried. Raka drilled him patiently in the warehouse yard at night when the streets were quiet, correcting his stance and timing. She moved with a grace that made combat look like dance, her spear an extension of her body. Watching her fight was mesmerizing. You are staring, she said during one session, not even breathing hard while Caden panted from exertion. Can you blame me? She lowered her spear and smiled. I suppose not. You are quite distracting yourself. I'm sweaty and clumsy. You are determined and brave. That is attractive. She crossed to him and wiped sweat from his brow with surprising tenderness. And yes, the sweat is not unappealing. He caught her hand and kissed her palm, feeling her pulse jump at the contact. I can't wait to start our life together. Nor can I. Her expression grew serious. But we must be careful. The road to Fort Crossing will be dangerous. There are bandits, wild animals, and worse. We must be vigilant. I know, but we'll face it together. Together, she agreed and kissed him. On the morning of departure, Caden stood in the warehouse yard and watched as Connor's crew loaded the wagons. There were 6 wagons in total, carrying trade goods ranging from spices to metalwork to bolts of cloth. The crew was mixed, as Connor had said. 12 humans and 8 orcs, all experienced travelers who greeted each other with easy familiarity that spoke of many journeys together. Caden and Raka were introduced as new guards, recent hires. A few curious looks came their way, but no one questioned Connor's judgment. The orc guards, in particular, seemed pleased to see Raka, welcoming her with nods and brief words in the orcish tongue that Caden did not understand. One orc, a grizzled warrior with a scarred face and graying hair, clasped Raka's forearm in what was clearly a traditional greeting. You have the look of a fighter, he said in accented but clear human speech. Good. We can always use more who know their weapons. Thank you, Raka replied. I am honored to travel with experienced warriors. The orc's gaze flicked to Caden, then back to Raka. Something passed between them, an understanding or question, but he said nothing more, just nodded and moved to his assigned wagon. That's Draugr, Connor told them quietly. Former clan chief before his people were wiped out in the purges 15 years ago. He's been with my caravan for a decade. Good man. Doesn't talk much, but when he does, people listen. The caravan set out at mid-morning, the wagons creaking as they rolled through Millbrook's north gate and onto the road beyond. Caden walked beside Raka, his hand occasionally brushing hers. They could not hold hands openly, not yet, but these small contacts felt like promises. The landscape beyond Millbrook was wild and beautiful. Rolling hills covered in autumn foliage, forests of oak and pine, occasional streams that sparkled in the sunlight. The road was well-traveled but not crowded, and they made good time. That first night, they camped in a clearing beside a river. The crew worked with practiced efficiency, setting up tents, building fires, preparing food. Caden and Raka were assigned to the first watch, which meant patrolling the camp's perimeter while the others ate and rested. They walked together through the trees, their footsteps quiet on the carpet of fallen leaves. The forest was alive with sounds. Owls hooting, small animals rustling in the underbrush, the river murmuring in the distance. "It's beautiful here," Caden said. "It is." Raka tilted her head back to look at the stars beginning to emerge in the darkening sky. "I have never felt so free from fear, from hiding. I know the journey is not over, that there is still danger ahead, but for this moment I am not running, I am choosing my path." She looked at him. "With you," Caden took her hand, no longer caring who might see. "I love you, Raka Ironheart. I love you, Caden Ashford." She squeezed his hand. "Whatever comes, we face it together." They completed their patrol and returned to camp, where Connor had saved them portions of the stew the cook had prepared. They ate sitting close together, their shoulders touching, and Caden noticed several of the crew watching them with knowing looks. After the meal, Draugr approached their fire. "May I sit?" he asked. "Of course," Raka said, making room. The old orc settled himself with a grunt, his knees popping. "I have been watching you too," he said without preamble. "You are bonded." It was not a question, but Caden answered anyway. "We are." Draugr nodded slowly. "Human and orc." "In my youth, such pairings were rare but not unheard of. Now with the wars, they have become nearly extinct." He looked at Raka. "Your clan destroyed," she said quietly. "I am the last Ironheart. I am sorry." Genuine compassion filled his voice. "I too am the last of my line." "It is a heavy burden, being the keeper of memories no one else shares." "How do you bear it?" Raka asked. "By living. By honoring their sacrifice with every day I draw breath. By building new connections, new purposes." He gestured around the camp. "This caravan is my clan now. These people, human and orc alike, they are my family." "You have found peace," Caden observed. "I have found acceptance. Peace is harder." Draugr smiled, a crooked expression. "But it helps to have purpose, and love when one is fortunate enough to find it." He stood, his joints protesting. "You two have a hard road ahead, but if you hold to each other, you will endure. Of this I am certain." He left them then, returning to his own fire. Raka stared after him, her eyes glistening. "What is it?" Caden asked. "Hope," she whispered. "He gives me hope that this can work, that we can build something lasting." "We will," Caden promised. "I swear it." That night they slept in a tent Connor had assigned them, officially separate but positioned close enough to each other's that they could whisper through the canvas. It was not ideal, but it was enough, knowing the other was near. The days fell into a rhythm. They traveled from dawn until late afternoon, made camp, ate together, took their watches. Caden learned the names and stories of his fellow travelers. Mara, a human woman who drove one of the wagons and told bawdy jokes that made everyone laugh. Grush, a young orc learning the trading business from Connor. Elias, a silent man who was deadly with a bow, and a dozen others, each with their own histories and hopes. He also learned that several of the crew were in mixed relationships. Mara and Grush were sweethearts, though they kept it quiet. Two of the guards, a human man and an orc woman, were married and had been for 5 years. Seeing these couples gave Caden courage, proof that what he and Raka wanted was possible. On the 5th day of travel, they encountered their first real danger. Bandits, a group of 8 rough-looking humans, blocked the road ahead, weapons drawn. "Stand and deliver," their leader called, a scarred man with missing teeth. "Leave your goods and you can pass unharmed." Connor, riding at the head of the caravan, reined in his horse. "I'm afraid that's not going to happen, friend. We're under the protection of the Merchants Guild. Attack us and you'll have bounty hunters on your trail within the week." The bandit leader laughed. "The Guild's protection is worth nothing this far from civilization. Now, are you going to be smart, or do we have to take your goods over your corpses?" Connor sighed. "Corpses it is, then. Guards." Caden drew his sword, his heart pounding. Beside him, Raka had her spear ready, her expression focused and calm. Around the caravan, the other guards mobilized, forming a defensive line. The bandits charged, clearly expecting easy prey. They were wrong. Caden met the first attacker's blade with his own, the clang of steel on steel ringing out. His training came back to him, muscle memory guiding his movements. He parried, riposted, drove the man back with a combination of strikes that left him off balance. A quick slash across the arm convinced the bandit to disengage and flee. Beside him, Raka was a whirlwind of lethal grace. Her spear darted and thrust, always exactly where it needed to be. She disarmed one bandit, tripped another, and sent a third running with a shallow cut across his ribs. She was not trying to kill, Caden realized, just disable and discourage. The fight was over in minutes. The bandits, realizing they were outmatched, retreated into the forest, leaving behind their wounded and their pride. Connor's crew did not pursue, content to let them run. "Everyone all right?" Connor called, dismounting to check on his people. A few minor cuts and bruises, but nothing serious. The caravan's guards were professionals who knew their business. Caden sheathed his sword, his hands shaking slightly from adrenaline. Raka touched his arm, concern in her eyes. "Are you hurt?" She asked. "No, you." "I am well." She smiled slightly. "You fought well. Your training is solid. Not as solid as yours. You kept yourself alive. That is what matters." Connor approached, looking them over. "Good work, both of you." "That could have been ugly if we didn't have skilled fighters." "Do bandits attack often?" Caden asked. "Often enough. It's why I hire the best guards I can find." Connor clapped him on the shoulder. "Come on, let's get moving before those idiots decide to try again with reinforcements." They traveled the rest of the day without incident, though everyone remained on high alert. That night, as Caden lay in his tent staring at the canvas ceiling, he thought about the fight. He had not enjoyed it, but he had not hesitated either. Protecting Raka, protecting Connor and the crew that had been worth the risk. "Caden," Raka's whisper came through the tent wall, "I'm here. I am glad you are safe. You too." A pause. "I wish we did not have to sleep separately." He smiled in the darkness. "Soon. Once we reach Fort Crossing and have our own place, we can sleep beside each other every night. I will hold you to that promise. Please do." The days continued to pass, each one bringing them closer to their destination. The landscape grew more rugged, the forests deeper, the roads less maintained. They were entering true wilderness now, the borderlands between human territory and the neutral zones. On the 10th day, they reached a river crossing guarded by a small fort. This was the official boundary of the neutral territories, a place where human law ended and the looser governance of the free settlements began. The guards at the fort were a mix of species, mostly human and orc, but with a few dwarves and even a lone elf. They inspected Connor's papers, checked the wagons for contraband, and waved them through with minimal fuss. "Welcome to Fort Crossing," one guard said, a dwarf with a magnificent braided beard. "Keep your weapons sheathed unless provoked, pay your taxes on time, and don't start fights you can't finish. Those are the only laws that matter here." Connor thanked him and led the caravan across the bridge and into the settlement beyond. Fort Crossing was larger than Caden had expected, a proper town with stone buildings, paved streets, and a bustling marketplace. The population was indeed mixed, and Caden saw couples of various species walking together openly. Without fear or shame, hope bloomed in his chest, bright and warm. Connor led them to his warehouse, a building near the town center. "Make yourselves at home," he said, showing them to a room on the second floor. "This is yours for as long as you need it. Now let me see about finding a buyer for your farm." True to his word, Connor returned that evening with news. "I've sent messages to 3 potential buyers. Should hear back within the week. In the meantime, there's someone I want you to meet. Her name is Thura Renwick, and she runs a homesteading cooperative about 10 miles north of here. They're always looking for new families." "Families?" Raka asked. "People looking to build lives together. Farmers, craftspeople, anyone willing to work hard and contribute to the community." Connor smiled. "I think you'll like her. She's tough but fair, and she doesn't care about species. Only character." They met Thura the next day. She was a human woman in her 50s, lean and weathered, with sharp gray eyes that seemed to see right through to a person's core. She looked Caden and Raka over with a critical gaze, then nodded. "Connor vouches for you, and that's good enough for me. But I'll be straight with you. Our community is built on mutual support and hard work. Everyone pulls their weight, everyone contributes. We share resources, help each other through hard times, and defend our own if threatened. In return, you get land to farm, materials to build a home, and neighbors who'll stand by you no matter what." She paused. "Questions?" "What about children?" Raka asked, then blushed. "Theoretical children in the future." Thura's expression softened. "We have a school. Mixed-species kids are common in our community. They're taught by everyone and loved by all. You'll find no prejudice there." "It sounds perfect," Caden said. "It's not perfect. It's hard work and long hours and occasional conflict, but it's honest and it's real." Thura extended her hand. "If you want in, you're welcome to join us." Caden shook her hand, then Raka did the same. "We're in," Raka said firmly. "Good, I'll have plots ready for you to look at once your farm sells. Connor will let me know when that happens." Thura stood to leave, then paused. "One more thing. You'll hear people talk about the old prejudices, the wars, all the reasons humans and orcs are supposed to hate each other. Don't listen to them. The only people who matter are the ones building the future, not clinging to the past. Remember that." She left, and Caden and Raka looked at each other with matching expressions of cautious joy. "This is really happening," Caden said. "It is." Raka took his hand. "We are going to have a home, together." The buyer for Caden's farm was found within 4 days, a young couple looking to start their own homestead. They offered 280 gold pieces, slightly less than Caden had hoped, but still a substantial sum. He accepted via Connor's messenger service, signing the necessary papers and officially severing his ties to his old life. It should have felt like a loss, but instead, Caden felt light, unburdened. The farm had been a refuge, but it had also been a cage, a place to hide from the world. Now he was stepping into the world, into a future he had chosen rather than one circumstance had forced upon him. With the money in hand, he and Raka visited Thura's community. It was a collection of about 30 homesteads spread across a fertile valley, with fields of crops, pastures for animals, and a central common building where the community gathered. Thura showed them 3 available plots. The third one, nestled against a small forest with a stream running through it, called to both of them immediately. "This one," Caden said. "Yes," Raka agreed. "This is home." They purchased the land along with materials for building a house and barn. The community, true to Thura's word, rallied to help. Within 2 weeks they had a small but sturdy house with 2 rooms, a fireplace, and a loft for sleeping. The barn followed, along with a chicken coop and a pen for the goats Caden bought from a neighbor. Every day was filled with work, but it was satisfying work, the kind that left them tired but content. They planted a winter garden, repaired fences, chopped wood for the coming cold months, and every night they fell into bed together, exhausted and happy. One evening, as they sat by their fireplace watching flames dance, Raka spoke. "I never imagined I could have this. A home, peace, love." Caden pulled her close, kissing the top of her head. "Neither did I, but here we are." "Here we are," she echoed. She tilted her face up to his. "Marry me." He blinked, startled. "What?" "Marry me, Caden Ashford. Make me your wife in truth before witnesses and the world." "I thought I was supposed to ask you," he said, recovering from his surprise. "Why, I know what I want. I want you forever. Is that not enough reason to ask?" He laughed and cupped her face in his hands. "It's the best reason. Yes, Raka Ironheart, I will marry you today, tomorrow, whenever you want. Tomorrow is too soon. We should have a celebration. Invite the community." Her eyes sparkled with excitement. "I want everyone to know you are mine." "Possessive, are we?" "Absolutely." They planned the wedding for the following month, giving them time to prepare and the community time to arrange a proper celebration. Thura offered to officiate, as she was the community's informal leader and had performed several weddings before. The month passed in a blur of preparations. Caden built furniture for the house while Raka sewed a dress from fabric she bought in Fort Crossing, a deep blue that complemented her green skin beautifully. Neighbors brought gifts, preserves, tools, a quilt stitched by a dozen hands. Connor arrived 3 days before the wedding, bringing gifts of his own, a matched set of iron cooking pots and a promise to provide the ale for the celebration. "I'm proud of you, lad," he said, clapping Caden on the shoulder. "You've built something real here." "I had help," Caden said, nodding toward Raka, who was laughing with several of the community women as they decorated the common building with autumn flowers and ribbons. "The best things are built together," Connor agreed. The wedding day dawned clear and bright, the autumn air crisp and clean. The entire community gathered at the common building, humans and orcs and dwarves all mingling, talking, laughing. Caden stood at the front, dressed in new clothes Raka had made for him, his heart pounding with nervous excitement. Then Raka entered and his breath caught. She was radiant in her blue dress, her dark hair unbraided and flowing over her shoulders, a crown of autumn leaves resting on her head. She walked toward him with confidence and grace, her amber eyes locked on his, a smile playing at the corners of her mouth. When she reached him, she took his hands, and Thura began the ceremony. "We gather today to witness the joining of Caden Ashford and Raka Ironheart," Thura said, her voice carrying through the hall. "Two people from different worlds who have chosen to build a new world together. This is the essence of our community, not where we came from but where we are going, not what divides us but what unites us." She turned to Caden. "Do you, Caden, take Raka as your partner, your equal, your love? Do you promise to stand by her in joy and sorrow, in peace and conflict in all the days of your life?" "I do," Caden said, his voice strong and sure. Thura turned to Raka. "Do you, Raka, take Caden as your partner, your equal, your love? Do you promise to stand by him in joy and sorrow, in peace and conflict in all the days of your life?" "I do," Raka said, her voice equally firm. Then, by the power vested in me by this community, I declare you married. May your love be a beacon to others, may your home be filled with laughter, and may your days be long and happy." Thura smiled. "You may kiss." Caden pulled Raka into his arms and kissed her as the community erupted in cheers and applause. It was a kiss that tasted of joy and promise, of everything they had endured and everything they would build together. The celebration lasted well into the night. There was food and drink, music and dancing, stories and laughter. Draugr, who had traveled from Fort Crossing for the occasion, gave a toast that brought tears to many eyes. "I have lived long," the old orc said, raising his cup. "I have seen war and peace, hatred and love, destruction and creation. And I tell you this, what Caden and Raka have built is the future. Not a human future or an orc future, but our future. One where we choose connection over division, love over fear. To the married couple, to the married couple," the crowd echoed, drinking deep. Later, as the celebration wound down and guests began to depart, Caden and Raka slipped away to their home. They walked hand in hand through the moonlit night, their breath misting in the cold air. Inside, the house was warm from the fire Caden had banked before the ceremony. They stood together in the main room, suddenly shy despite everything they had shared. "Hello, husband," Raka said softly. "Hello, wife," Caden replied, drawing her close. They made love slowly, tenderly, learning each other with hands and lips and whispered words. It was perfect in its imperfection, awkward and sweet and passionate all at once. And when they finally lay tangled together beneath their quilt, sated and content, Caden felt a peace he had never known. "I love you," he murmured against her hair. "I love you," she replied, already drifting towards sleep. Winter came, blanketing their valley in snow. Caden and Raka settled into the rhythms of married life, tending animals, maintaining the house, visiting neighbors, sharing meals and stories and quiet evenings by the fire. It was simple and hard and utterly fulfilling. In the spring, Raka discovered she was pregnant. She told Caden one morning as they worked in the garden, planting seeds for the coming season. "I am with child," she said, her hand resting on her still flat stomach. Caden dropped his trowel, staring at her. "Are you certain?" The midwife confirmed it yesterday. "I wanted to be sure before I told you." She watched him anxiously. "Are you pleased?" "Pleased." He crossed to her in 2 strides and swept her into his arms, spinning her around despite her laughing protests. "I am overjoyed. We are going to have a baby. We are going to have a baby," she repeated, wonder in her voice. The pregnancy progressed smoothly. Raka remained strong and healthy, though she tired more easily as the months passed. The community rallied around them, offering advice and assistance and hand-me-down baby clothes. By the time autumn came again, they had everything they needed for the new arrival. Their daughter was born on a crisp October evening, delivered by the community midwife with Caden holding Raka's hand through every moment. She was perfect, tiny and squalling, with green-tinged skin a shade lighter than Raka's, small nubs where tusks would eventually grow, and Caden's blue eyes. "She is beautiful," Raka whispered, cradling the baby against her chest. "She is," Caden agreed, tears streaming down his face. What should we name her? They had discussed names for months but never settled on one. Now, looking at their daughter, Raka said, "Kira." "It means hope in the old orcish tongue." "Kira Ashford," Caden said, testing the name. "It's perfect." Little Kira Ashford grew quickly, a happy baby who laughed easily and charmed everyone she met. Watching her crawl across their floor, babbling in a mix of human and orcish sounds, Caden felt his heart swell with a love so fierce it almost hurt. One evening, when Kira was nearly a year old, Caden and Raka sat on their porch watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of pink and gold. Kira slept in Raka's arms, her small fist curled against her mother's chest. "You ever regret it?" Raka asked quietly. "Leaving your old life behind," Caden considered the question. He thought about his father's farm, about the solitary life he had been living, about the path he had been on before a wounded orc girl stumbled into his barn. "Not even for a moment," he said. "This, here with you and Kira, this is everything I never knew I wanted. This is home." Raka leaned against him, careful not to wake the baby. "I was so frightened that night I came to your barn. I thought I would die there, alone and far from my people. Instead, I found you, I found love, I found a future." "We found each other," Caden corrected, "and we built this together." "Together," she agreed. They sat in comfortable silence as the sun sank below the horizon and the first stars began to appear. Around them, their small farm rested in the gathering darkness. The house they had built, the fields they had planted, the life they had created from nothing but hope and determination and love. In the distance, lights flickered on in neighboring homesteads, a constellation of warmth spreading across the valley. Their community, their family, their world. Kira stirred and made a small sound, then settled back into sleep. Raka kissed the top of her head, and Caden wrapped his arm around his wife's shoulders, drawing them both close. This was not the life Caden had imagined for himself when he left the military, and it was not the life Raka had known in her clan. But it was their life, built on foundations of trust and sacrifice, and the simple, radical choice to love across every boundary the world tried to impose. Tomorrow would bring its own challenges, crops to tend, animals to care for, a toddler to chase. But tonight, this moment was perfect. Caden looked at his wife, his daughter, his home, and felt gratitude wash over him like a blessing. He had hidden an orc girl in a hay wagon and whispered that she was almost home. He had not known then that she would become his home, or that he would become hers. But here they were, against all odds, a family forged from courage and kindness. Here they were, living proof that love was stronger than hate, that connection was more powerful than division, that two people from different worlds could build a new world together. Here they were, home at last. The stars wheeled overhead in their ancient patterns, constant and eternal. The valley slept peacefully, cradled by the arms of the surrounding hills. And on a small porch, under a vast sky, a human man held his orc wife and their sleeping daughter, grateful for every moment that had led them to this place, this life, this love. Their story was not one of grand battles or epic quests. It was simpler than that, and perhaps more important. A story of choosing compassion over cruelty, of building rather than destroying, of loving fiercely in a world that said such love was impossible. And in that small house, with its rough-hewn furniture and homemade quilts, with its garden and barn and fields stretching out into the darkness, Caden and Raka had created something that would endure long after they were gone. A legacy of hope, a testament to the power of two hearts that refused to be divided, a home where love had conquered all. As the night deepened and the temperature dropped, they went inside, closing the door on the cold and settling by the fire. Raka laid Kira in her cradle and the baby slept on, peaceful and content. Caden added wood to the fire, watching the flames catch and grow. "Tell me a story," Raka said, settling into the chair Caden had built for her, the one with the high back that supported her shoulders. "What kind of story?" Caden asked, sitting on the floor beside her, his head resting against her knee. "A happy one. About a future where Kira grows up strong and loved, where she never has to hide or run or fear what she is." Caden smiled and took her hand. "That's not a story, my love. That's a promise." And in the warmth of their home, surrounded by everything they had built and everyone they loved, Caden kept that promise every day for the rest of his life. Years passed, and the homestead grew. They added rooms to the house as their family expanded, 2 more children joining Kira. A son named Torin who had his mother's strength and his father's gentle heart, and another daughter, Mira, who inherited Raka's fierce determination and Caden's stubborn optimism. The children grew up knowing they were loved, knowing they belonged to both worlds and to neither, creating their own identity in the space between. They played with the other mixed heritage children in the community, learning from both human and orc traditions, building friendships that would last their lifetimes. Caden's hair began to gray at the temples, and Raka's hands grew calloused from years of farm work. But their love never dimmed, never faded. If anything, it deepened, ripening like fruit in the summer sun, sweeter with each passing season. On their 10th anniversary, they stood together in the same common building where they had married, surrounded by the same community, older now but no less vibrant. Thura, ancient but still sharp, led them in renewing their vows. 10 years, she said, her voice carrying through the hall. 10 years of joy and sorrow, growth and challenge, love and commitment. You have shown us all what is possible when 2 people choose each other, every day without reservation or regret. May you have many more years together, and may your love continue to inspire us all. Caden looked into Raka's amber eyes and saw his entire world reflected there. I would do it all again, he told her. Every moment, every choice, every step that led me to you, I would do it all again in a heartbeat. As would I, Raka said, tears spilling down her cheeks. You saved my life, Caden Ashford, and then you gave me a reason to live it. They kissed as the community applauded and their children cheered, and Connor, grayer now but no less exuberant, shouted something inappropriate that made everyone laugh. The celebration that followed was smaller than their wedding had been, more intimate, but no less joyful. Friends and neighbors shared food and drink, stories and songs, celebrating not just Caden and Raka but the community they had all built together. Late in the evening, as the party wound down, Draugr approached them. The old orc moved slowly now, his years weighing heavily, but his eyes were still bright. I wanted to tell you, he said, his voice rough with emotion, that watching you 2 has given me hope for our future. All our futures, human and orc and everything in between. You have shown that love is stronger than hate, that family is what we choose, not what we are born into. For that, I thank you. We should be thanking you, Raka said. Your wisdom and guidance helped us find our way. Draugr shook his head. You found your own way, I merely witnessed it. He clasped their hands, one in each of his. Live long and love well, my friends. That is all any of us can hope for. He shuffled away, and Caden and Raka watched him go with fond eyes. We are blessed, Raka murmured. We are, Caden agreed. They returned home that night to find their children already asleep, watched over by a neighbor. Caden and Raka checked on each one, adjusting blankets and kissing foreheads, then retreated to their own room. As they lay together in the darkness, Raka traced patterns on Caden's chest with her fingers. Do you remember the checkpoint? She asked. When you told me almost home, stay quiet. I remember everything about that day. I believed you even then. I believed we would make it home because you said so with such certainty. She raised herself on one elbow to look at him. You were right, we are home. We are, he confirmed, and we always will be as long as we are together. She kissed him, long and deep, and he pulled her close, marveling as he always did at the miracle of her presence, the gift of her love. Outside, the wind whispered through the trees, carrying the scent of growing things and the promise of tomorrow. Inside, a family slept peacefully, safe and loved and whole. And in that small house in a valley far from the borders and boundaries that divided the world, Caden and Raka Ashford had built something that would outlast them both. A legacy of love, a sanctuary of acceptance, a home where two hearts beat as one. This was their story, their truth, their happily ever after. Not perfect because perfection does not exist in the real world, but real and honest and deeply, profoundly good. And that, Caden thought as sleep claimed him, was more than enough. That was everything.